A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to Primetime News here on News First, where the people come first. You're joining me, Naveksha Gunasekara, and before we start off, let's have a look at your headlines for tonight.
Central Bank bill to be debated in Parliament on Thursday. Bill is flawed. Present a fresh draft. Gammampila requests. Opposition alliances in talks over way forward. Incumbent president was appointed only to complete Gotabaya Rajapaksa's term. No further agreements made, says SLPP General Secretary.
අන්නේ වැඩපිළිවෙලින් වත්මන් ජනාධිපතිතුමා ඇතුළු රජය වෙනත් පැත්තකට යනවා නම් අපිට ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් සාකච්ඡා කරන්න සිදු වේවි.
Price of imported wheat flour hiked by 10 rupees. Investigation officers of the Consumer Affairs Authority on a token strike. Ancient Wadua Ketugala in Dambadeniya to be converted into a stone quarry.
Now on to your top story tonight. The debate on the proposed central bank bill aimed at achieving greater central bank independence is set to be debated in Parliament on Thursday. However, the Supreme Court has noted that a number of clauses in the central bank bill are inconsistent with the Constitution and amendments are required for it to be passed with a simple majority. Now, what fate will eventually befall the central bank bill? News First delves deeper into this matter tonight.
Obtaining parliamentary approval for the central bank bill, drafted at the end of April 2023 in consultation with the International Monetary Fund, is a consensus reached as part of the structural changes agreed upon for Sri Lanka to access the extended fund facility. The bill has been drafted and presented to Parliament by now. On the 4th of April, the Supreme Court made known to Parliament its stance on the bill following consideration of petitions filed by several factions. According to the draft submitted to Parliament, this bill has been submitted to establish administrative and financial independence within the central bank. The bill proposes two structures, namely the Governing Board and the Monetary Policy Board. The Governing Board, headed by the Governor of the Central Bank, should consist of 6 members who shall have expertise in economics, banking, finance, accounting and auditing, law or risk management. The bill adds, the members of the Governing Board, other than the chairperson, shall discharge supervisory and policy formulation functions of the Central Bank and shall not discharge any executive function of the Central Bank. The bill proposes for the Monetary Board to be empowered to make decisions concerning monetary policy. The Monetary Policy Board will also be headed by the Governor of the Central Bank and consist of the 6 members of the Governing Board. It will also include 2 experts in economics or finance, the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank in charge of price stability, and the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank in charge of financial system stability. Based on the bill, the subject minister will make recommendations to the President on appointees for the Governing Board and Monetary Board. Thereafter, the bill notes, quote, if the President is satisfied with the suitability of the persons so recommended, the President shall recommend the names of such persons to the Constitutional Council for approval, unquote. However, the Supreme Court has determined that a number of clauses must be amended if the bill is to be passed with a simple majority.
So basically, one of the major amendments proposed by the Supreme Court is that in the event the Constitutional Council is not approving the names recommended by the President, which are being proposed to the Constitutional Council on the recommendation of the Minister, if the Constitutional Council does not approve the procedure. And further, in respect of appointment of the Deputy Governors, earlier the provision as it was in the original bill was that the Minister with the concurrence of the Governing Board may determine the number of the Deputy Governors and appoint the Deputy Governors. So now a Minister is involved in appointment of the Deputy Governors with the recommendation of the Governing Board. Earlier, as the gazetted bill was, with the concurrence of the Governing Board, the Minister is involved in the appointment of the Deputy Governors, now with the recommendation of that. So other than that, the Minister's powers, involvement pertaining to the appointment procedure, there's no much changes proposed by the Supreme Court.
When News First inquired from the General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Podujana Perumana, Sagara Karyawasam, regarding the matter, he said sufficient amendments have been proposed. He said if those bills are implemented, the party will support the bill.
MP Uday Gamampila said a new draft bill must be presented instead of the previous one.
ඇත්තෙන්ම මේ පනත් කෙටුම්පත අපි දකින්නේ පොඩි එකාගේ ලියුම වැනි ලියවිල්ලක් විදියට ඉතිහාස.
We see this draft bill as a letter from a child. As far as I know, no other draft bill was subject to as many changes by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has proposed 82 amendments to 39 clauses. The first document becomes flawed. The government should formulate a new draft bill and publicize it through a gazette for the people to study. In the agreement signed with the IMF, they have promised to pass the bill in Parliament within the month of April. April has passed. Although a new draft bill should be presented instead of this, we believe they are not doing so because of the written agreement with the IMF.
ඒ නොකර සිටින්නේ ජාත්‍යන්තර මුල්‍ය අරමුදලට ලිඛිතව ලබා දුන්නු පොරොන්දු නිසා කියලා අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා.
Factions that express interest in joining an alliance under the leadership of opposition leader Sajith Premadasa convened in Parliament today. Extensive discussions regarding the proposed bill were conducted during the meeting.
We must all admit that for a country to generate wealth, private enterprises are needed. A social market economy, demand and supply, and a wealth creating mechanism is needed. The majority of these things can be done only through private entrepreneurs. But private entrepreneurs cannot distribute wealth among the public equally. At that point, the state needs to intervene. This non-biased economic vision is where we all can come together.
තුන්වෙනි මාවත මැද මාවත සමබර ආර්ථික දැක්ම.
There are serious issues about the Central Bank Act. In the Act, there is an attempt to make the Central Bank independent from the executive and the legislature. There is a problem there. According to the standing orders of the Parliament, the chairman of the Committee on Public Finance must be given to a member of the opposition. That person must be an MP proposed by the opposition. The government is trying to give this to an opposition MP who is willing to whitewash them. 5 meetings were postponed. They called for a meeting at 2 p.m. today. The Speaker postponed this meeting 5 times. The government does not care about the Parliament.
ඒ විපක්ෂ ඔබතුමා කියන ජාතික කට්ටියත් ඉන්නවද? මොකද? දැන් ආණ්ඩුවේ රෙදි හොදන කට්ටිය ඉන්නකෝ විපක්ෂ. ඉන්නවා එහෙම ඉන්නව නැත්තේත් නෑ.
Meanwhile, Professor G.L. Pires points out that getting the approval of Parliament regarding the agreements with the IMF is an attempt to unload the responsibility to the Parliament.
Last week, Parliament approved the agreement between the government and the International Monetary Fund. This is not a legal requirement at all. There is no tradition of that sort either. It is extremely clear why the government made this decision. The government knows that due to certain conditions in it, this agreement is not very popular. The government also knows that this agreement will result in a lot of backlash from the public. That is why they wanted to share the responsibility without the government having to do so by itself. That is why they broke the tradition and went against the existing law to get the approval of the Parliament.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට දාලා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ අනුමැතිය ලබා ගැනීමට තීරණය කළේ.
The Sri Lanka Banks Association says the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has assured the banks that the regulatory stance in the ongoing domestic debt optimization discussions with the diverse stakeholders will be that the banking sector stability cannot be put at risk.
In a statement, the Sri Lanka Banks Association said the capital and liquidity of the banks need to be maintained sufficient to support the growth of the economy post-debt restructuring, together with other necessary measures to bring the balance of payments and fiscal deficit into a sensible equilibrium. Presently, the banking sector is well capitalized with average capital adequacy ratio over 15% and a liquidity coverage ratio of 200%. The imperative remains to be that this position is not weakened. The Sri Lanka Banks Association appreciates the long and arduous effort by the central bank leading up to the finalization of the extended fund facility from the International Monetary Fund. This has contributed to improvement of market sentiment and economic outlook for the rest of the year. The statement adds, the hard policy measures taken by the central bank to create the conditions for facilitating the ongoing disinflation process and to restore stability to the economy must also be recognized.
In more headline-making news, investigation officials of the Consumer Affairs Authority have commenced a token strike and are now refraining from engaging in any field duties.
Meanwhile, investigation officials of the Consumer Affairs Authority have commenced a token strike and are now refraining from engaging in field duties. The chairman of the All Ceylon Investigation Officers Association, Kosala Ranganath, says that the reason for this strike is the attack made on one of his officials recently. The All Ceylon Investigation Officers Association and the Nava Peramuna engaged in a silent protest opposite the Consumer Affairs Authority.
There are statements from our officers citing that those from the egg associations aided in this attack, directly or indirectly. No action has been taken on them. The President and the IGP must take a decision regarding this.
Operations at the Kurunegala branch of the Consumer Affairs Authority did not happen today, and black flags were hoisted as a sign of protest. A protest was held opposite the office. The attack on the group of Consumer Affairs Authority officers was carried out on the 4th of May in Naramala, when the group went to inspect a farm upon information regarding attempts to sell eggs at higher prices.
Why were Consumer Affairs Authority officers attacked brutally? If the Consumer Affairs Authority stands for the consumers, if they stand on the side of the consumers, if they prepare a mechanism in which quality goods can be sold without the existence of the black market, this assault would not take place. Yesterday they removed the tax on bread. Today the price of wheat flour has increased by 10 rupees. Has the Consumer Affairs Authority looked into this? Did they increase the price after bringing wheat flour? The flour that was purchased previously are in the storages. They must check up on that first.
Sri Lanka Supreme Court granted leave to proceed in 4 fundamental rights petitions filed by 4 children, all under the age of 14 years, who have alleged that they were arrested by the CID and forced to sign confessions to false implicate Attorney-at-Law Hijaz Hizbullah in acts of terrorism.
The bench comprised of Justices Murdu Fernando, Priyantha Fernando and A.M.D. Nawaz. The petitioners, all children, were represented by President's Counsel Jeffrey Alagaratnam, President's Counsel Farman Qasim, Attorney-at-Law Shanta Jayawardena and Attorney-at-Law Nuwan Bopage.
Actually, these applications were filed in the year 2020. We know 15th of April, lawyer Hijaz Hizbullah was arrested. After 1 week, actually CID went to Mattakul area and they arrested few children and they actually obtained their statements arbitrary and under duress. At the same time, they intimidated these students. So the parents of these students filed these fundamental right applications seeking reliefs from the Supreme Court. This conduct of the CID violated and infringed their fundamental rights. So this case is concerned, it is very important. We know as to how the government used Prevention of Terrorism Act to detain the people. Especially the Hijaz Hizbullah has been detained for more than 1 year. The main allegation level against them, these statements obtained from these students. Now it is evident that these statements were obtained under duress and under intimidation.
Today, the cases where the children, with the allegation that the 4 children who were taken by force to be questioned in 2020 April with regards to giving falsified statements against Hijaz Hizbullah was taken up in the Supreme Court. The allegation by the children were that CID took them by force, kept them for 10 to 12 hours questioning alone without their parents and coerced the children into stating facts which were false, specifically that showing photographs photographs of Hijaz Hizbullah and asking to identify Hijaz Hizbullah as a person who trained them in weapons training and so forth. Taking into consideration all the matters in the petition, the judge of the Supreme Court, Justice Murdo Fernando, Justice Nawaz and Justice Priyanka Fernando, granted leave to proceed in terms of Articles 11, 12.1, 13.1, 13.2 and 14.1e of the Constitution.
We'll be back after a short commercial break. Stay with us.
අම්මේ මම නම් කැමති නෑ මේ arrange marriage වලට. මට ඕනේ හොඳට තෝරලා බලලා
සුපර් මාකට් ගියා වගේ හොඳට තෝරලා බලලා ගැලපෙනව කෙනා තෝරගන්න. ගැලපෙන එක ඔච්චරටම තෝරනවා නම් ගන්න වෙන්නේ ඉන්ෂුවර් මී එකෙන් ඉන්ෂුරන්ස් එකක් විතරයි.
ඉන්ෂුරන්ස් එකක් ගන්නවා නම් ඉන්ෂුවර් මී එකට කතා කරන්න. හොඳට තෝරලා කම්පෙයාර් කරලා අඩුම ගාණට ඉන්ෂුරන්ස් එකක් ගන්න පුළුවන්. ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ ඉන්ෂුරන්ස් සුපර් මාකට් එක insureme.lk.
Welcome back to the news. While the debate over bills to be presented in Parliament continues, the latest controversy in the political sphere concerns various appointments. Are there attempts to appoint new governors? And will the appointed governors resign? Now this is the latest on the matter.
Political sources revealed that the Presidential Secretariat had informed the governors of the Sabaragamuwa, Uva, Northern and Eastern provinces to resign. According to the sources, names of senior members of the United National Party were proposed for these posts. A senior official at the Presidential Secretariat said it is tradition for governors to resign when the President steps down. He said it is similar to the cabinet being dismissed if the Prime Minister resigns. The spokesman said the relevant governors have not resigned, although several months have passed since Gotabaya Rajapaksa resigned from the post of President and Ranil Wickremesinghe was appointed to the post. Governor of the Eastern Province Anuradha Yahampath expressed these views following a Vesak festival held in Trincomalee.
Based on the prevailing situation, this may be the last time I address all of you from the Eastern Province.
Speaking during a media briefing in Trincomalee today, religious leaders said the current governor of the Eastern Province must remain in her post.
We found that the president is suddenly trying to remove the Eastern Province governor who acted knowing the importance of this region for 3.5 years. This governor acted regardless of political affiliations, race or religion. Removing such a governor is a great loss to us at this time. The motive behind it is concerning. The people have not rejected her. Politicians will say no when they cannot fulfill their personal agenda. Taking this into consideration, it is appropriate to allow the governor to remain in her post. This is a wrong tradition. The message the Aragalaya gave us was to appoint suitable people to suitable posts. They are trying to remove the present governor and appoint their affiliates or others based on personal connections instead. It is concerning whether the country can be uplifted in this manner.
General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Sagar Karyavasam, says the party will have to discuss and make a decision if the program they were elected to carry out is not being implemented.
Ranil Wickremesinghe will be in office until the tenure of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is over. That is what we expected from him. Apart from that, we are not in any sort of agreement with him.
ඔබතුමන්ලාගේ පක්ෂය සම්බන්ධව අමාත්‍ය දුර කීයක් විතර තියෙනවද? එහෙම නැත්නම් මොනවද ඇත්තම නැද්ද?
මේ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයේ ඔබ දන්නවා අග්‍රාමාත්‍ය ධූරය දරන්නේ.
The Prime Minister of the Cabinet is Dinesh Gunawardena. Even though he contested under the SLPP, he is the leader of the Mahajana Eksat Peramuna. 2 MPs who contested under the SJB are ministers. 3 MPs who contested under the SLFP banner are ministers. Moreover, MPs who left the government and criticized the government hold ministries in the cabinet. We don't agree with the notion that this is an SLPP cabinet.
මේ කැබිනට්ුවේ කැබිනට් අමාත්‍ය ධූර දරනවා. ඒ නිසා මේක ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොදුජන පෙරමුණේ කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයක් හැටියට නම් කරනවට එකඟ නැහැ.
උපක්‍රමයක් විදියට නව රජකු බිහි කර ගැනීම සඳහා කරන උපක්‍රමයක් විදියට කකුල පස්සර ගැනීමක් එහෙම මොකක් හරි දෙයක් තියෙනවද ලේකන්තු?
මේ රටේ මීළඟ ජනාධිපතිවරයා බිහි කරන්නේත් ශ්‍රී ලංකා
The next president will be from the SLPP. We don't follow such tactics like you said. This party will always say what it wants publicly with no fear. Our party does not bring in leaders through conspiracies, but the people of the country elected the SLPP. We will not forget that in any way. The people voted for us, placing their trust in the program presented by us. If the president is drifting away from that program, we will have to discuss it. If that happens, we will need to make a decision regarding that.
එහෙම තත්ත්වයක් උද්ගත වුණොත් අපිට ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් තීරණයක් ගන්න වේවි.
The central bank bill and the Supreme Court's determination of its clauses have caused a stir in the social sphere. We brought to you details of this bill earlier on in the bulletin. Let's now take a look at some amendments proposed by the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court determination includes several amendments with regard to the removal of an appointed person from office.
One of the major amendments proposed by the Supreme Court is with regard to the removal process of the governor and the members of the governing board and the monetary policy board. Earlier in the original bill, the procedure for removal would take much longer time. Now the Supreme Court has proposed an amendment into that, and also the Supreme Court has held that when the process is commenced, when the inquiry is commenced for the removal, the President has the power to suspend. So it's a major amendment proposed by the Supreme Court in its determination.
The Supreme Court's determination includes facts on the central bank functioning as a fully independent institution.
Supreme Court, in its determination on the constitutionality of the bill, has mainly said that in view of the structure and the framework of the Constitution as provided for by Article 3 and Article 4 of the Constitution, therefore it is not possible to create an autonomous institution or an organ independent from the government or contrary to the framework of the Constitution. So basically the essence of the Supreme Court determination is that the central bank need to have an effective link with the executive arm and the legislative arm of the government in appropriate circumstances. And the Supreme Court has determined that the provisions which have been identified by the Supreme Court need to be subject to the amendments which have been laid down in the determination itself. And unless such amendments are incorporated into the bill at the committee stage, the bill as it is gazetted cannot be passed by Parliament by a simple majority.
Despite these developments, the central bank bill is scheduled to be debated in Parliament on Thursday. But has a sufficient discourse on this matter arisen as of yet? Has sufficient attention been paid within and outside Parliament to such a complex legal amendment? Previously, effective debates and opinions expressed on the Bureau of Rehabilitation Bill gave way for a host of amendments to be added to the legislation prior to being passed into law. Similarly, the large discourse that arose on the Anti-Terrorism Act led the government to delay it being passed into law. Considering all the aforementioned examples, shouldn't a broader debate be conducted on legal amendments to the central bank, which is a linchpin of our economy?
On last night's Bulletin, News First reported on how the patients at the Colombo National Hospital and the Apeksha Hospital in Maharagama were severely inconvenienced due to the lack of essential material required to operate the PET scanners. We got more for you on this story right after this short commercial break. Stay with us.
Real progress have the people in the north and the northeast in the former conflict areas. What real progress have they had?
Well, apart from the fact that lives are not being lost.
Right.
On every other indicator, my view is that things have either been stagnant or it has got worse.
What my basic point about the ATA is, the basic point is that it's implemented not for the betterment of the country, but it's to appease members of the SLPP who had their houses burnt down.
Suraj access. Are they done and dusted?
Well, at the moment, yes. But I mean, with politics, you can never say. The most popular people get thrown out in 2 years.
So, What do you think? Do you think there's some monkey business going on here rather than in the export of monkeys?
Yes, there are a lot of monkeys to be exported to China because they are wasting and destroying our resources.
Newsline, Monday to Friday at 8:30 p.m. on TV1.
යායපහ කරුවල ගස් වැව ගමේ ජනතාව පානීය ජලය සොයා ඇවිද ගිය කාලය පසුගියදා අවසන් කළා. ඒ ගම්මැද්ද පානීය ජල ව්‍යාපෘතිය ජනතා අයිතියට පැවරුණු වගයි. ගම්මැද්ද රට නගන ජන පෞර.
But our main grouse here is that this bill as it is being brought to suppress the people.
After the recent Aragale, then after the IMF deal, now this government, especially the Ranil Wickremesinghe government, believe they want to curtail the democratic rights of the people.
We are very suspicious as to why this particular bill has come up at this particular moment, the need for it, in what context this is being brought with such urgency.
You will have DIGs issuing detention orders. And we know that there has been a history of abuse by the police. So giving that power to the DIGs I see it as extremely problematic.
So there was no involvement of any politicians or you as the minister on
Not at all. Not at all. Once they completed the draft, I myself studied it. That I wanted to make few adjustments.
Face the Nation, Wednesday nights at 9:30 on TV1.
Welcome back. You're watching Prime Time News here on News First, where the people come first. News First reported that patients of the National Hospital of Sri Lanka and the Maharagama Apeksha Hospital were suffering due to the lack of essential material required to operate the PET scanner, which supports in the diagnosis and critical treatment of cancer patients.
News First inquired into this from authorities of the Maharagama Apeksha Hospital and the National Hospital of Sri Lanka. Director of the Maharagama Apeksha Hospital, Dr. Aruna Jayasekara, said PET scan examinations are only conducted on Thursdays and Sundays, and these activities are being carried out continuously. Deputy Director Dr. Rukshan Bellana said the PET scan at the National Hospital of Sri Lanka is also operational.
In more local news, the Department of Meteorology says that a low-level atmospheric disturbance has developed over the southeast Bay of Bengal area, and this system will gradually develop into a low-pressure area and then into a cyclonic storm in next few days. The fishing and naval communities are requested to be attentive to future forecasts issued by the Met Department in this regard.
Many paddy fields in Narammala have got inundated due to the continuous rainfall experienced during the last few days. Our correspondent said that about 100 acres of paddy fields in Katupatha, Horambava, Matiwala Gedara and Polgahabela were inundated due to the heavy rainfall. Meanwhile, the Met Department says that western, Sabargamua, central, northwestern, southern and northern provinces as well as the Trincomalee district may experience showers or thunder showers. The forecast also says that strong winds may occur in the western and southern province coastal areas and the western slopes of the central hills. The wind speed of the coastal areas from Colombo to Galle and Matara to Hambantota could go up to 55 kilometers per hour. The Met Department has said fishing community and those who engage in naval activities need to pay special attention to its weather forecasts and special notices. Meanwhile, senior geologist of the National Building Research Organisation, Wasantha Senadira, says that the landslide warnings issued for the Badulla, Galle, K-Galle, Kurunegala and Mathura districts are still active.
බදුල්ල දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ පස්සර ප්‍රාදේශීය ලේකම් කොට්ටාසයටත් ගාල්ල දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ
Warnings have been issued to the Passara Divisional Secretariat Division belonging to the Badulla district, Nagoda, Yakalamulla, Baddegama and Alpita Divisional Secretariat Divisions of the Galle district. Warnings have also been issued to the Mavanella, Galigamua, Ramukkana, Yatiyantota, Daranegala and K-Galle Divisional Secretariat Divisions. Residents of these areas must be vigilant as landslides, mounds of earth, collapsing and earth sinking may occur in those areas.
වර්ෂාපතන යම් ක්‍රමික වර්ධනයක් නිරීක්ෂණය කළොත් එම ප්‍රදේශවල ඉවත් වී ආරක්ෂිත ස්ථානයක් කරා යන්නට ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා.
Drifting your attention to more headline-making news. Essential food importers increased the price of 1 kilogram of wheat flour by 10 rupees today, despite an assurance given by the State Minister of Finance, Ranjit Siampalapitia, yesterday that the removal of the 3 rupee customs duty concession on wheat flour will not result in a price hike.
The customs duty for wheat flour, which was at 16 rupees, was reduced by 3 rupees, and the government yesterday decided to remove the concession.
A concession of 3 rupees was provided for wheat flour through the customs duty. We imposed that 3 rupees once again. The main reason for this is because wheat flour is the largest substitute for rice. We have a responsibility to protect our paddy farmers. 90% of paddy farmers are dependent level farmers. Therefore, they must be protected and they must be given a fair price. That is why the 3 rupee customs duty concession was removed. There is no reason for the price of wheat flour to increase as a result.
However, Chairman of Essential Food Commodities Importers and Traders Association Nihal Senaviratne said the price of 1 kilogram of wheat flour was increased by 10 rupees due to the removal of the tax concession and the increase in other costs. As a result, the wholesale price of 1 kilogram of wheat flour was increased to 210 rupees today. Although News First attempted to inquire into the matter with wholesale traders in Petha, most traders were unwilling to comment on it.
We only found this morning that wheat flour prices were increased. How do we survive? We woke up this morning to find that wheat flour and rice prices were increased.
This is what the Magen Ratata movement had to say on the matter during a media briefing held today.
The 3 rupee tax concession on wheat flour was removed yesterday. How was the price of 1 kilogram of wheat flour suddenly increased today after the tax was increased yesterday? Shouldn't the Consumer Affairs Authority look into how many stocks were imported and sorted during the time the tax was reduced? While the Consumer Affairs Authority has not done this, if stocks were imported in large numbers while the tax was reduced and the prices suddenly increased the day after the tax was increased, that is clearly a mafia. We have suspicions over who is behind the increase in prices of essential food items. Do you remember the sugar scam? On October 13th, 2020, the 50 rupee and 25 cent tax imposed on sugar was suddenly reduced by 50 rupees. In February 2021, the control price was removed. One importer benefited from this. One importer had hoarded a large stock of sugar. As revealed by the Committee on Public Finance, 16,708 million rupees was lost to the state as a result. A recent report by the World Bank highlights that Sri Lanka's ongoing economic crisis is estimated to have doubled the country's poverty rate. Isn't this large-scale scam a reason for the current plight of our economy? 16 billion rupees would have benefited the people greatly. However, only one businessman benefited through it. The individual responsible for this scam is still at large. Is it not the citizenry that will suffer the damning effects of colossal scams such as this?
The 3 suspects arrested over the death of the 16-year-old girl in Kalutara have been remanded until the 15th of May. However, investigations are underway to find the person who arrived with the girl and was identified as a married man.
Police received a tip-off on the night after Vesak Poya Day that the naked body of a young girl was found lying behind a lodging in Kalutara. Police later found the body lying near the railway track behind a 5-story building. The deceased student had rented 2 rooms on the 5th floor of a lodging located adjacent to the railway track in Kalutara, along with another young couple and a young man. This is the CCTV footage of them arriving at the accommodation. An employee told the police that the 4 who arrived at the lodging had consumed alcohol while at the accommodation. The other couple that arrived with them had left the accommodation around 30 minutes before the body was found. Police said investigations revealed that the suspect who fled had informed the couple over the phone to move the body from the railway track. The couple had then arrived at the location and moved the deceased girl's body from the railway track and handed themselves over to the police. This is how the married man had left the accommodation. He had left the accommodation by calling a car. Police found the car abandoned near the Galanigama entrance of the Southern Expressway last afternoon. The person who drove the car is among the 3 people arrested. The deceased girl was identified as a 16-year-old resident of Nagoda, Kalutara.
මගේ දරුවා ඒ දරුවගේ ආලුවෙක් දැන් දවසේ එදා හවස 5ට විතර ඇවිල්ලා කිව්වා මෙයත් එක්ක දාන්සලට යන්න ඕන කියලා. මම එතකොට කිව්වා දරුවට යන්න එපා කියලා. දෙසරයක් ඇහුවා ඒත් එපා කිව්වා. තුන්වෙනි සැරේ ඇහුවාම දරුවෙක් නිසා මම කිව්වා ඔයා එහෙනම් ගිහිල්ලා ඉක්මනට එන්න කියලා. නමුත් ඊට පස්සේ දරුවා ගෙදර ආවේ නැතිකොට මම කෝල් එකක් ගත්තා. මම අපි මේ දාන්සලේ ඉන්නවා කිව්වා. නමුත් දරුවා ගෙදර ආවේ නැති තැන මං ආයි දරුවට කෝල් කරාම ෆෝන් එක වැඩ කරේ නැහැ.
Commenting on the incident at a press conference held today, police media spokesperson SSP Nihal Taldua said it was revealed that the national identity card used by the 16-year-old girl to book rooms in the accommodation was borrowed from a friend of hers. Police said investigations are underway to determine if it is a murder or suicide, as scratches, bites and bruises were visible on the girl's head, neck, chest and leg areas. Moving on to more local news, the LOLC Divisavya program launched to lend a helping hand to hundreds of thousands of students who are the future of Sri Lanka continued today as well. Books and other stationery items were distributed among students in the Jaffna district today.
Under the Divisavya program, books and stationery items were provided to school students from the most economically challenged parts of Sri Lanka. This worthy initiative is a collaboration between the LOLC group and the Ministry of Education. The program was also carried out at the Jaffna, Badamarachi and Tenmarachi education zones. Books and stationery items were distributed to the children of the Maruthan Karni Karvil School, Allarai Tamil College, Shavakacheri College and Madhuvil Shantinayaki College.
In news overseas, at least 21 people have died after a packed tourist boat capsized in India's southern Kerala state.
The death toll could rise as rescue efforts are underway on Monday and the vessel is pulled from muddy waters. Abdul Nazar, Junior Superintendent of Police of Malappuram district, told Reuters overcrowding caused the double-decker boat to capsize. The boat was reportedly carrying about 50 people or double its capacity when it overturned on Sunday night. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed condolences on Twitter, saying he was pained by the loss of lives. According to local media, many passengers were trapped under the boat and the darkness held back rescue efforts. The casualties included women and children on school holiday. Kerala Sports and Fisheries Minister said at least 4 people who were taken to hospital are in critical condition. Survivors told local media many of the passengers were not wearing life jackets at the time of the incident.
Russia launched a wave of drone, missile and airstrikes on Kiev and other Ukrainian cities, officials said on Monday, as Moscow stepped up attacks while preparing for its cherished Victory Day holiday, celebrating the defeat of Nazi Germany in 1945.
The General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces said in its morning update on the fighting, as many as 16 missile strikes had targeted the cities of Kharkiv, Kherson, Mykolaiv and Odessa regions, in addition to 61 air strikes and 52 rocket salvos on Ukrainian positions and populated areas. The military said Ukrainian air defenses destroyed all 35 Iranian-made Shahid drones Russia had launched. Kiev's mayor said at least 5 people were wounded in the capital amid damage to a fuel depot, cars, buildings and infrastructure. The military said, quote, "Unfortunately, there are dead and wounded civilians. High-rise buildings, private homes and other civilian infrastructure were damaged," unquote. A food warehouse was set ablaze in the Black Sea city of Odessa. The war has also had a significant and lasting impact on global food markets. A leading exporter of grain, Ukraine has seen a dramatic drop in its exports, resulting in major food security concerns for millions of people around the world. Following the actions of the EU and the UN, exports have been growing and food prices have dropped. However, more than a year since the start of the war, food prices are still above 2021 levels and the outlook remains difficult.
For the people, by the people.
There is now a greater need for companies to get closer to the customer.
That Sri Lanka has not really expanded avenues of earning foreign exchange.
The global perspective and how traditionally value chains have been formed and designed.
Our export strategy has always been out of sync with global trends.
There are certain difficulties in Sri Lanka in terms of doing business.
Commitment of a country to improve its own competitiveness.
The People's Platform, every Monday and Friday at 7:30 p.m. on TV.
Sri Lankan sprinter Yupuna Bekon recorded his win of 2023 yesterday when he was placed first at the men's 200-meter event at the Firenze Sprint Festival held in Italy.
ඉතාලියේ ෆ්ලෝරන්ස්දී මෙම තරඟාවලිය පැවැත්වුණා.
Back to more local news. This is a report regarding an ancient heritage sold off to be used as a stone quarry.
This is a place with great archaeological value that holds many ancient factors of the Dambadeniya kingdom. A group of people arrived at the Department of Archaeology and protested today, alleging that permission has been granted for a quarry to be operated at this historic site.
Dambadeniya is Sri Lanka's third kingdom. There are 3 main monuments here: Maligagala, Vaduaketugala and Katgala. The Department of Archaeology has granted permission for a quarry to operate at the Vaduaketugala. We cannot understand based on what premise this permission was granted.
The group were then allowed to hold a discussion with the Director General of the Department of Archaeology. The Director General of the Department of Archaeology, Anura Manatunga, said a group of officials will be sent to the location to inspect the site.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News for tonight. Thank you for watching. All these stories and much more are available on our website, that is www.newsfirst.lk. Thank you and good night.